Hi and welcome to another Wednesday, and today I'm going to continue on the topic of boundaries. So I will be talking a little bit about how to set boundaries out of love. And the reason I want to bring this up is that very often we want and we should be setting boundaries when there has been a boundary violation. And when there has been a boundary violation, we often feel very angry, we're resentful, and we're not really in a good space to set a boundary. And when I'm saying setting a boundary, what I'm talking about is that if you do X, Y, Z, whatever the scenario is, I will do X, Y, Z. So, as an example I've used before, if you are shouting at me, I will leave the room. Saying no is never a boundary, but saying no and following up with some sort of action is a boundary. So that is what makes the difference. If you're saying no and you threaten someone or you tell them how they should behave, that is not a boundary. Okay. So I know I made a video on what a boundary is and what isn't, but it's always good to be reminded. It seems to be so much confusion around what boundaries are and what they aren't. So I just want to make that really, really clear. So if you do something, this is the action I will take to protect myself and my integrity and my well-being. And that's all it is. So first of all, I would like you to, if your boundary has just been violated, I would like you to just take a little bit of a timeout, sit down, write down all your thoughts around the boundary and the boundary violation. So that just gets everything down on paper, or if you prefer writing it on your computer, I don't care where you're writing it down, but just write it down so that you can read it back and so that you can see it from the outside and not having it all in your head. Then you can have a look at it and you just see what's the emotional part, what's not actually reasonable. Is this a boundary or is it a threat? You want to have a look at it, and then you want to ask yourself the question, okay, is this a boundary that I do for my own well-being? Or am I doing this to punish someone else? Because you want it to be to protect you. The other person has nothing to do with this. This is your boundary to protect yourself. So first of all, when you do this, you want to think that you don't want to expect people to respect your boundaries. You need to be prepared to follow through with the action. So don't expect people to respect or honor your boundaries. Just set them and expect others to violate them. Okay? That's the best place of coming from. And when you've done that, if you for years have let people violate this boundary that you now want to set, they're going to continue to do it. And you have to expect that. Just because you tell them once, you might have told them before, but not actually follow through in an action. And that just diminishes your self-respect and their respect for you and your boundaries. So just expect them to not respect your boundaries for now, set the boundary, and be prepared to follow through. And always, I don't know how many times I've said it, but keep in mind that it's about you. It doesn't matter who it is that is violating your boundary or what it is that they're doing. You want to take care of yourself, your well-being. So it's just a consequence of the action that they are taking that is violating your space. Don't bring any blame or guilt or anger into it. Just try to see it as something else that is just an action with a consequence. So the phone rings, you're going to pick up. that is the consequence of the phone ringing. You will pick it up. That's what you will do when the phone rings. That's what you have decided that you are going to do when the phone rings. The same thing, if, let's say, your partner is yelling at you. It's my favorite example because this is one of my boundaries. If someone is yelling at me, I will leave. I do not tolerate that. I don't have to be upset about it. This is just what I do if someone is yelling at me. I'm not going to stand around and being yelled at. So I will leave the room, or if need be, I will have to leave the house if your partner would follow you. But I will leave, and that is my boundary to protect myself. I know that I would be very upset if I put myself through that, and I don't want to do that. And I don't want to have to deal with and have to do all that work on myself to try and calm down and excuse their behavior or whatever it is that I need to do to get back to myself. So this is just, I have already decided if someone yells at me, I will leave, and I will not read anything more into that. The reason for why they are yelling, that's not my problem, that has to do with them. Okay? And the third one, this is super important, and you need to have a really, really good think about it. And this is that you need to be willing to sacrifice the relationship if there is an ongoing boundary violation. So I will say that again. You need to be willing to sacrifice the relationship if the person keeps violating your boundary. When you set the boundary, I'm going to bring up another example that I had the other week, that if you come uninvited to my house, I will not open the door. And that's what's going to happen. Unless you let me know that you're coming before, or check with me if I have time to see you, I will not open the door. And this might be very, very upsetting for many people, because that is disrespectful. They are there for you, they want to spend time with you, and so on. But you already told them, this is my boundary. I need to protect my time and what I do with it. So please check with me first before you come round, otherwise I will not open the door. And this can create a lot of drama. So you need to be prepared to have this drama going on. And this person might not want to speak to you for weeks after that. They might not want to speak to you ever. But you have to ask yourself, can you, or do you want to have a relationship with this person where you're not living your truth, where you're not being yourself? Is that worth it? Or do you want to change the consequence, maybe? You will have to ask yourself those questions, and it's really important that you are prepared to follow through with the consequence. So the good thing with this is, if they start respecting your boundaries, maybe they will be angry for a couple of weeks, then they will come back, and you will have a different kind of relationship, a much more true and honest relationship. They will know that when you say yes, you mean yes. And when you say no, they will know that you don't want to do it. They will respect that. They will respect you for telling your truth. And you don't have to do it in a mean way, obviously. You can put things whatever way you want to put them, just to let them understand that it's all about you. It's you, it's your boundaries, it's your well-being, and it has absolutely nothing to do with them. You love them equally much regardless, but this is to protect your time and your well-being. And it takes a lot of courage to follow through with something like this, I know that. And you will have to actually have a really good think about whether you want to set a boundary around something like that. So if you're not prepared to follow through with the consequence, it will just be an idle threat. And once they figure out that it's just a threat and you're not going to do anything about it, then obviously they're not going to respect that boundary. So it's better for you to either not have the boundary, and you'll just have to accept that they can do whatever they want, and you'll have to be cool with it. Then it's not a boundary anymore. Or you will have to make sure that you have a consequence that you're prepared to follow through with. So you can always change your consequence. Sometimes you don't even have to let a person know that you have a boundary, because a lot of time, like with violence, for example, if someone hits you, we kind of expect the person to react and have a boundary around it. We don't need to communicate that. But sometimes we do need to communicate things. Sometimes people are not, they don't see things the same way as we do. And especially if you're a neurotypical and you have an autistic partner, they might not see things the way you see them. They might struggle to understand your point of view. And that's where you just need to tell them, hey, when you do this, this is how I will react. And follow through. Once again, just follow through. And this is the most important part. Otherwise, you have no boundaries. And that's okay if you don't want to have any boundaries. I'm not saying that you need to have any boundaries. But most people have some boundaries. Some are communicated and some are not. Yeah, so that's. I think that's all I had to say for today. I've been rambling on today a little bit, and I will be back next Wednesday with, I think, it's the last boundary video. I hope this has clarified a little bit and got you thinking about what you need to do in order to set the boundary and whether you think it's worth it or not. So good luck with that, and see you next Wednesday.